Hello and welcome to HealthyHouseplants.com, where we teach you all about gardening in the great indoors. If you'd like to support our show, please use our Amazon affiliate link below. Today we are going to talk about pressing flowers and foliage from houseplants. This is really fun to do, a nice hobby. And it also makes some really beautiful flowers that you can use to decorate items like cups and your walls and things like that. You can make bookmarks and coasters and stationery with pressed flowers, and they're really fun to make and to press. I'm going to show you how to press them today. They were actually have been people have been pressing flowers in general, and I'm going to show you houseplants that are pressable, so because we're doing indoor plants here, but they've been doing that for centuries. It's something that was used as an art form back during the Renaissance. In more recent times, Princess Grace Kelly of Monaco was a flower enthusiast, and she was a pressed flower artist. Her pressed flower art is even appeared on the country of Monaco's stamps. So that's really, really cool, very beautiful stamps as well. As mentioned, you can use them to decorate many items. Another item is placemats, trash cans, picture frames, really pretty on picture frames. I even have a clock that I made from pressed flowers. So pressing is fairly easy. It looks kind of complicated, but it's actually very easy and very pretty. You can invest in a flower press, or you can make your own. I'm going to show you right now some flowers that I have pressed. So you will see here there are some African violets there, and then some foliage. It's been a little while since I did that foliage. I'm not exactly sure where that foliage came from, but today we are going to press some foliage, and we're going to do an arrowhead plant leaf. We are going to do maidenhair fern plant leaf, which is a really good specimen for pressing from the maidenhair fern because it has very thin foliage. The thinner foliage plants are the ones you're going to want to press. They have less water in them. Something thick like a succulent is very hard to press in the as a hobbyist kind of a thing. Palms. This is from a parlor palm, so we're going to press the palm too. Here was another one that I did. I'll show you here. And this was actually from an indoor rose and growing indoors. So that's what it looks like when it's done. So you'll see that there's varying colors that occur when you press, once the water comes out of the foliage or the flower and it dries, it's going to dry to different colors. So for instance, things that are yellow will get kind of a mustardy color. Things that are red can become burgundy. They may even get a little darker than that. Some of the greens really come through as green again, as you can see here, and then sometimes they get a little, that's more of a mustardy yellow color. So it just depends on the plant. I always think of it as fun because I never know what the plant that I'm pressing is going to look like in the end, and I'm always happy to see whatever happens. So as you saw, I had this in a coffee filter. Coffee filters are really useful for pressing flowers. They will absorb the moisture from the flower as it's drying very nicely. So it's a much better choice than things like paper towel. So you'll want to get some coffee filters. They also do make a certain type of paper that looks like construction paper but is actually for pressing flowers. So I put this in between here, and I'll show you what I'm doing in a minute with that. So in terms of in general drying, so as mentioned, the thinner leaf things, so that being said, African violets do really well when pressed because they are a thinner flower, and it's a gorgeous look, as you can see, once it does dry. This was from a purple one that I did, and today we're going to be doing a pink. And we will check back in once these dry so we can see what they look like after they've dried. We will do a reveal of that. So as mentioned, prepare to be surprised by the transformation of your blooms. As mentioned, yellow, orange may turn very different colors. Blues and pinks tend to fade, giving them a real antique look. Red turns rusty color, generally speaking. The drying times is going to vary depending on the flower and the season of the year. It generally takes 1 or 2 weeks for most flowers to dry, so you're going to want to check your flowers on a weekly basis. You're going to want to peek into the drying area that you've got, where you've got it drying, and you're going to want to see how it's doing and how dry it is. You do want the flowers and foliage to be completely dry when you're done. So any moisture in them, and when you take them out, they'll get crinkled and kind of funky looking. They won't be nice pressed and pretty, so they need to be completely dry. So just give it some time and have some patience. Okay, so these are our dried ones. So we are going to press today, as mentioned, these 3 in terms of foliage. So you feel free to experiment, look around your indoor garden, see what other types of plants you could do. I'm going to cut this arrowhead leaf here, you can see here, right off at the base, so that I'm left with not very much stem. Really don't, that stem is way too thick to dry, so I'm not going to leave it on there. So now this will be able to press down nicely when it's being pressed. I'm going to go ahead and put these to the side very gently. You do want to be real careful with the flowers and the foliage once it is dried, because it is very delicate, very dry, very delicate, so it can shatter easily. Okay, so we've got this nice arrowhead, got this nice palm. This little stem here, it can stay on, but it's thicker at the end here, so I think I'm going to take that off just because it is so thick. And actually this part here, which has a thinner stem, is likely to probably do better drying, but I'm going to leave this whole thing on because I think this is going to be a very nice dramatic look once it does dry. And this guy is very thin stemmed and leaves, so I'm going to leave it the way it is. Now, going to get ready to take off one of these African violets for drying. Check it out. So you really want one that's in its prime so that you get a nice vibrant color when it dries. So I'm not necessarily going to take off the old one and dry it because that won't look as good. Okay, so I'm going to take this one off here. This is a real nice one, and you can do more than one too. I'm going to take it off at the base and have the stem, but then I'm going to take the stem off because you don't want to leave the stem on the African violet. Okay, so we've got that there. Nice. See that? And you see it's cut off at the back here pretty good. Okay, now I'm going to take coffee filters, as mentioned, and I'm going to put in one of them the arrowhead plant leaf. Make sure it's not crinkled up or folded in any way. Going to do the same with this guy. If they're not big enough, you will have to use 2, and this is a little too big, so I can cut this to make, I like having these little envelopes because it makes it easier to handle them when they're drying so they don't get hurt, don't get broken at all. So I think I'm going to try to think I'm going to take off this one on the end just like that, just so this is going to fit better. And so, delicate operation as mentioned, you just kind of have to do what you can to make sure they all go down flat the way you want. And if you have one that doesn't, I mean, it'll give a different look to things. So there, we still have a little bit sticking out. And I have some crinkled leaves that I'm looking at here to try to flatten. So I'm going to go ahead and double this up here. And stick the other end in another one. Okay, so now I've got this going on here for that. So I could have left that other end on. We'll likely do that. I have some more of these over there, if you can, running out of these. So I'm gonna get some more here. Okay, so I think, actually, thank you. This guy, same situation as the other. I think we're gonna do a double up here on this so that we get the whole thing in, because I really like the look of this here. So I'm going to put another one on the end. There, so we've got the palm leaf, the parlor palm leaf in there. We're only going to need one here. And you can reuse these as long as they don't smell or seem, they shouldn't be damp or anything like that when you're done. So they can be reused. Slide this pretty African violet in there nicely. Okay. So now we're going to put, these all should fit in here fairly well. I'm going to stack them so that they aren't, we don't have any on top of any others. This is actually a field press, so to be used if you are out scouting about in the forest or somewhere in a field and you found a lot of beautiful wildflowers, but you can still use this sort of situation indoors. There are more expensive presses if you really get into it and you want to continue to do it on a regular basis, but this is fine because what we're going to do once this is done is we are going to put on top of here, I have a big dictionary that's very heavy that I'm going to put on top of this to weigh it down. You can also put on top bricks, so that's another option. Now I know there's nothing in this part right here, so I'm going to put that right there. You have a little bit of overlap here, it's okay. But you wouldn't want to stack them all on top of each other because they will take a lot longer to dry and they may not dry as nicely for you. Let me put this on top, press it down, and then I'm going to use these big rubber bands, which somehow, there we go, and going to put them on to hold everything in place. Now the rubber bands aren't good enough to press hard enough for them to be pressed, because the pressing it is a pressing action that you want. You want it to be firmly pressing down so that when the flower or the foliage is done, that it is nice and flat and pressed and has dried nicely. This is another big one I can put on here. So this is really, it's helping to press it down by putting these rubber bands on. You could also secure it with clips if you wanted to, but more importantly, it's keeping everything together so that if I drop it or something like that, I don't have to worry about the everything going, moving and then not drying well. So, and as mentioned, afterwards I will be putting something heavy on top of this, most likely my big dictionary or some bricks. I have both. And waiting a week, then I will check them, see how dry they are. If they look very dry, I will then go ahead and take them out. If they do not look dry, I will then continue to dry them. And actually, I'm not going to take them out until I do the next video to show you, to do the reveal of what they look like. I will be checking on them, most likely, but won't take them out until then. You can leave them drying for an extended period of time. So you don't have to get them out in 2 weeks. You could leave them for 2 months if you want to. It would be good, though, to check on them, make sure they're looking okay and during that time period. But there's no deadline on when you need to get them out. So that is something else to keep in mind. You want to store them in flat and transparent envelopes or plastic zipper bags in a cool, dry location away from sunlight once they have been dried. So that's what I have been doing with those, and go to put them back and collecting a few more things, and then I'm going to be making another clock with them. Thank you for stopping by today. Please leave any comments about any indoor gardening tutorials you'd like to see. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. And please check the bell when we release new videos.